Okay, hey guys, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. I'm very excited for today's special episode, my 100th episode. I told you guys I'd be coming back with a really special edition, exciting episode for the 100th. So I have that for you guys today. I'm really excited to welcome today's guest, Meera Lee Patel. She is an artist and an author whose work centers on self reflection, emotional awareness, and intentional living, all things that we love over here on the Evergreen RX. Through her illustrations and writings, she helps people ask better questions and develop a deeper relationship with themselves. Her latest journal, Learn to Let Go, was inspired by her own journey of accepting where you are, embracing change, and finding the courage to let go, which we know can take a lot of courage sometimes. So I thought she would be the perfect person to help answer a listener question today, all about ambition and feeling guilty, about not doing more, and how to balance just being and living your life while also getting all the messages about how much we should be doing and maybe sometimes that we're not doing enough. So super excited about it. Welcome, Meera.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations on 100 episodes. I think that's an amazing milestone.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I got to take a second to actually soak it in because it's
Yeah,
just
you should.
I think in line with this episode, it's kind of one of those things we just kind of keep the wheels
hmm
turning, and especially with creative output or putting things online, there's this consistency to it. You're supposed to continually be putting things out there,
hmm
and so it can be hard to kind of notice and be like, wow, okay, actually I have created a lot, and that's something worth acknowledging or
Recognizing.
celebrating.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. I think that the culture is designed to, the algorithm is designed to, everything is designed to make you feel like if you don't keep the momentum going, it will end and it will fall apart. And I have progressed through my career with that mindset. And it's only recently that I'm learning that, you know, the momentum and the successes and the ambition and the accomplishment doesn't really amount to much if I'm not able to recognize and celebrate the steps along the way.
Hmm.
So I do. I hope you do take some time, maybe a day this week, to really celebrate 100 episodes. I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, thanks.
Mhm.
So, like I said, we're going to answer a listener question, and why don't we just go ahead and jump right in and hear what this listener had to say,
Sure.
and then you can give us your thoughts. So it says, "Dear Evergreen, I've been trying to live more mindfully, but part of me feels guilty for letting go of ambition and the pressure to do more. How do you find peace with simply being when the world keeps telling you to become more?"
So a lot of things stand out for me with that question, and I can relate to all of it. But I guess I would gently ask the writer, the caller, to question, where's the guilt coming from? When you feel guilty for not being ambitious, where is that guilt and that shame coming from? Is it coming from an external source that tells you you need to do more to matter? Is it coming from a person, a voice that says to have value, you need to accomplish? Or is it coming from yourself? Are these burdens that you've placed on yourself?
Mm,
Um, I think figuring that out is key to understanding why you feel guilty and whether that guilt uh, is something you should keep holding on to.
mm-hmm.
Guilt is usually a sign of something we feel we should do but don't want to do. And so if your mind and your body is, tired or frustrated and is saying, I want to be here. I want to be present. I want to engage in my mindfulness practice. Um, but I feel guilty. You really need to ask yourself why.
Mm,
Um, and a lot of times that guilt is conditioned. So it's in American culture, it's in American society. A lot of life, I think, from a very young age can feel like a rat race where you have to keep up, and there is disappointment and regret if you don't. But I think those feelings are also conditioned in us.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I would advise anybody who's feeling this kind of maybe paralysis is to revisit their value system. What are the three values that you hold most dear? And are you living in alignment with them? If
Mm,
ambition or material progression is not a value for you, then that guilt should be, released immediately. That
yeah.
that guilt is not serving you and it doesn't have a place in your life. The
I, I
other Go ahead.
I think that that's a fantastic point because what you were saying about, where is the goat coming from in the first place? Is it yours? Is it conditioned? Tying it to values makes a lot of sense to me because yeah, we're kind of in this, I don't know, you could call it conditioning or the way that like society seems to run largely, at least in America, like there's this idea of ambition like should be a value of yours, or like it's like almost imposed as if it is everybody's value,
Hmm.
and that's just not the case.
Right.
I would say even with my work with the clients as a therapist, like I've gone over values with a lot of people, and they've defined them over time, and most people ambition or challenge or success in these kind of more material ways is not one of their
Hmm.
top values. That's actually more rare, I would say,
Hmm.
versus something like connection, which comes up a ton for people.
Hmm. Absolutely, connection, and even the caller is talking about a mindfulness practice. Like, is that what success looks like to you? To feel grounded, to be
Mm,
in your body, to be present in your life? Then, if that is what success is for you, then you are pursuing it. And
mm,
that's something to feel wonderful about, not guilty. Um, the other point I wanted to bring up is that transition, I think, and growth, personal growth, can feel really uncomfortable because you're leaving behind a version of you that once felt like home. It's familiar to you, it's you. And so when you're changing shape and when your desires and your needs are changing, I think it's important to take a minute to recalibrate and to say, this is the life that I thought I would have, but this is the one that I'm living. And this third one is the one that I want to move towards.
mm,
And to understand that some of this guilt and shame sometimes arises because we're leaving a version of ourselves behind. And
mhm.
that's okay, but also to find comfort in it, to recognize the growth, and then to let go of it.
I think that's the piece of like finding the courage to let go
Hmm.
that so much of your work focuses on, because the guilt and shame I think that can come up is almost like a, I don't know, surrogate or secondary emotion or something to
Hmm.
the grief,
Hmm.
that it is hard even when we're moving towards something that we think is more aligned. It still can create some sense of grief,
Hmm.
and letting go of who we have been, or the kind of version of ourselves that we thought was really going to work for us, or the version of ourselves that experienced certain things in life that were
Hmm.
really meaningful, and so
Hmm.
somehow moving away from that version of us feels like moving away from those things or those people. I feel like there's so many different layers of grief, even when the change can feel for the better or for the
Hmm.
positive or be exciting too. I don't think really any of that personal growth or change is ever devoid of some level of grief or mourning, letting go,
Hmm.
and having to, kind of accept that and come to terms with it.
I totally agree with you. Yeah. Even if it's positive, even if it's good growth, there is a mourning, there is a letting go. And so those feelings of discomfort, they're natural too, and they will fall away if you want them
Mhm.
to.
Mhm. And talking about, the conditioning piece too, like the guilt on, oh, I maybe my values that I've determined that I want to, move closer to, and they don't look like ambition or they don't look like success in a certain way. That means that I'm letting go of the values that were imposed on me by my family, and I'm
Hmm.
becoming different than my family or my loved ones in that way.
Hmm.
Or, you know, um, that in some way there are certain messages that say that the values and the things that you actually care to put your time and energy into are not worthy or okay. I think
Yeah.
even like I think more recently, like something like mindfulness, like trying to live with more like contentment or mindfulness, being more present, like it's become desirable to people. Like I think it's more talked about, it's more practiced. So I think even sometimes that can be viewed positively or negatively depending on the circles that you're in, and can also kind of become a self-imposed thing. Like I need to uh the opposite of this hustle that doesn't feel good to me, the opposite of the ambition and the striving, must be mindfulness and presence and just like slow life, letting go of expectations, not trying to strive. And I don't always think that that's true either. Like that's, for some people it is, but for a lot of people it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
And I think there can be a way of maybe even sometimes swinging to the opposite direction as an antidote to the stress and the pressure and the productivity mindset that is very culturally dominant. But then swinging to the other side sometimes might not also feel completely authentic or genuine to some people. I mean, obviously this question seems like that is an important thing, but not.
I think that's really interesting. Um, I actually don't see ambition and mindfulness as sitting on opposite sides of a spectrum. I think that you can be mindful and ambitious.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Right? I think it's
Mhm,
all about whether you're running your own race. And
mhm,
so the question seems to be coming from a person who is experiencing conflict, maybe because what ambition looks like for her or him is not the version of ambition they want to have for themselves.
mhm, mhm,
But I think mindfulness, I think this person is practicing mindfulness because that's how they got to this question. That's how they got to this realization that they are in a period of conflict, that something doesn't feel right, and
mm,
that they want to figure out what that is. That's a level of awareness that a lot of people don't bother engaging in.
mhm,
So I think they're well on their way to sorting it out. Um, and mindfulness, is being present. That doesn't mean slow. That means being in tune with yourself, recognizing your thoughts, understanding and processing your feelings,
mhm,
um, being able to be where you are instead of living in the past or living in the future. So, I think ambition in terms of mindfulness is irrelevant. You can be ambitious or
mhm.
unambitious, but, be present in who you are and where you are.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that the question made me think of is a feeling of belonging. And there's something Brene Brown talks about, which I actually keep on a post it on my desk because it resonated so deeply with me. And this question brings it up for me. And what she says is that belonging is when you get to be you. If you get to be you, then you belong. If you
Mm,
have to change, that's fitting in. So if I have to change to what I think is belonging, that's not belonging, that's me trying to fit in. But if I get
mm,
to be me exactly the way I am, that's true belonging. And the question reminds me of that. It seems to be a question of belonging. I am not interested in these other things, but I want to belong. How
yeah.
can I do that? And like you've talked about, maybe it's changing circles. Maybe you are changing and you need to find the community that accepts you for who you are so you can
Yeah.
truly belong.
That's a fantastic point. I'm really glad that you brought the belonging piece in because I think, inherently in what we're talking about and kind of even what we were touching on before recording, like identity keeps coming up for me, this idea of identity and roles. Um and there can be roles that we put on that are not necessary, but we also all have roles that are just that's how we live our life. We're going to be in certain roles. And so I feel like belonging is so relevant to this idea of like, how do, you know, what you said with this question, like it is self reflective, and clearly there is a level of mindfulness and an understanding of, okay, what is me? What doesn't feel like me? What
Hmm.
resonates? What doesn't? And so within that, there can be some reshaping of identity, of roles, of what we want to do and how we want to show up in our life. And then, yeah, that sense of belonging that always comes along with these other concepts that I think is really the part that causes any of the suffering or the pain.
Hmm.
Because to just know who you are and say, oh, well, I like green, I don't like blue. So I'm just
Hmm.
not really going to wear blue. I'm going to wear green.
Hmm.
That's great and that's wonderful. Where the pain comes in is that when it comes to bigger things in life, where it's everyone else is saying, well, wear blue. Why aren't you wearing blue? What's wrong with you that you're not doing that?
Hmm.
Then we start to bump up against, I think, that idea of connection and
Right.
relationship and stuff that is so at the core
Hmm.
of, I think, being a human, that that can cause some of the
Yeah.
questions and the like, I don't know, am I kind of allowed to balance my life this way? Is it okay to like green as much as I do? You
Hmm.
know, and am
Hmm.
I going to have to lose some relationships in order to
Yeah.
pursue this, or am I going to have to kind of lose some parts of myself in
Hmm.
order to maintain those relationships?
Both of those. Am I disappointing myself? Am I disappointing a previous version of myself? Am I disappointing people I love or care about?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all questions I imagine the caller is dealing with, and those are tough questions.
And how do you like when facing questions like that, or as we know, there's no perfect answer or solution to it. What are some ways that you bring yourself comfort in that, or some sense of um, care or safety
Yeah.
within all those big questions?
Well, I think the question of disappointment is a good gauge. I think it's a good measure for how to move forward in life. And I tend to ask myself, am I disappointing myself? That is my primary focus. Because if I'm disappointing myself, I'm not going to feel good in my own skin. And
Mm,
if I don't feel good in my own skin, I won't be able to show up for the people that I care about the way I want to. So that's kind of my first boundary. Rather than, am I going to disappoint somebody else? I consider myself, am I going to disappoint me?
mm,
And if the answer is, I'm not gonna, or I might disappoint a previous version of me, but the present me does not value this, then, I move forward. And people outside of me who feel disappointed by my actions, that is, those are their feelings to deal with. If I'm
mm,
not doing anything to hurt somebody, and I'm not breaking, I'm not breaking promises, or if I am, I'm doing it respectfully and with compassion. If I'm doing everything I can to move forward in a respectful and healthy way, and somebody is still upset by what I'm doing, it's very likely that that has nothing to do with me.
mm.
And so I try not to take on other people's baggage. I try to move forward, in a
Mhm,
way that makes sense for me and that guarantees my health, because I know that if I don't feel good, I'm not going to be able to take care of others. And I
mhm,
have learned that by experience. I have learned that by putting other people's needs first and seeing that it is not sustainable and it's
mhm.
not a healthy way, it's not a helpful way to live. you have to take care of yourself. And you have to live in alignment with your values if you want to avoid long term resentment and anger and bitterness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and I know that all of that comes from so many years too of self-reflection, self-questioning, spending time to really get to know who you are, which I think helps build the motivation or the drive to be able to make choices that are for us and not for
Hmm.
other people. I think
Hmm.
getting to the point of having the motivation in a weird way, and I don't mean that in any kind of judgmental way. It's more like I think everyone that struggles in this way, maybe with some of the more kind of focus on others and not being able to make so many decisions for ourselves, like I do think it takes time and building up the kind of strength to try out doing something that is not disappointing to you, that you know will be disappointing to someone else, or at times can feel like, life or death. Like, if I don't do this for the other person, the other person's then gonna fall apart or something bad will
Hmm.
happen.
Hmm.
Um, so I kind of just that's just coming up for me as something I want to flag too for people that might be listening. It's like it's a process, but I think it's so powerful to just even start asking yourself the questions, even if
Hmm.
you aren't going to change the action that you do.
Sure. Yeah.
Even
I.
if it's like, I know that's going to disappoint me and I'm going to do it anyway,
Hmm.
doing it with some awareness.
Hmm. I totally agree. And learning yourself, learning who you are, that is a continual process because hopefully you're always changing. So,
Mhm.
just like this person is, they're changing and they're learning how their new mind works, why these thoughts are coming up, why what used to feel good doesn't feel good anymore. And so that's
Yeah.
an ongoing process of continually questioning yourself, the thoughts you're having, the actions you're taking, and seeing if they are in alignment and if you are living in a state of, symbiosis with yourself.
Mhm. This is really interesting because it brings me to another point I wanted to explore with you, because to me you have such a clear voice. Like I was telling you, like I like
Thank
to
you.
read your newsletter, and you just have this honed expression of yourself. And I was curious if it feels that way to you, and how you have gotten to that point, which is a huge question, but just in general, how that kind of relates, this way of kind of honing your expression, your sense of self, and how you get
Yeah.
there. And
Well, thank you for the kind words. That really means a lot to me. I do not always feel confident or grounded or secure in who I am at all. So I have many moments throughout the day of frustration, insecurity, and I think I tend to like bombard myself with the same question, which is, why are you like this? Which is not a particularly kind, way of talking to yourself. And something I'm really working on in the present, I feel that I am changing in 1,000 different ways over the last, let's say, 3, 4 months.
Mm,
And I feel really proud of myself because they are good, big, positive changes in my personal growth.
mm,
At the same time, when I'll tell you something. I'll give you a real example. Something good happened to me in my career this week, and past me would have picked it apart and found all of the holes in this good thing,
mm,
and would have poisoned a very positive move forward.
mm,
Present me, who has worked really hard to understand why I have a tendency to self sabotage, why my critical voice is louder than my creative voice, why I put myself down so often instead of helping myself rise up. Present me, 90% was like, this is an amazing thing. Celebrate, feel good,
Mm,
be content. And 10% of me was past me saying, like, but what about this? But look at all these other people and look at what they're doing. Like, this
mm,
accomplishment is so minor compared to them. And yeah, this is kind of good, but it could have been better.
mm,
And so, awareness is having the ability to see the 90% and the 10%, to recognize the 10% is the old me, much like the caller who is like, well, I used to be ambitious and maybe I'm not. And there's this guilt
mm,
about letting it go.
mm,
So I'm there also, except I don't feel guilt. I feel, why is that 10% still there? I thought I
mm,
cut that out. And it was a realization that it takes time and a lot of work to be able to truly shed the parts of you that are
yeah.
not serving you.
Mhm,
And so I felt very um, thankful that I was able to identify the 10%. And I was able to say, I recognize that this pattern of thinking is familiar. And that's why I'm holding on to it, because it
mhm,
feels comfortable. That's it. Not because it feels good, not because I like it, not because I want to be that person, but it just feels comfortable. It's a habit, and habits
mm,
are hard to break. So once I processed all of that, now I'm able to say, okay, I really don't have use for you. So you can leave, and the 90 can become probably not 100, but like 99. And that's really good. And that's a step forward in solidifying a new pattern in my brain, and a pattern that I am happy to have, and one where I want to instill that pattern deeper into my brain and let it carry me forward. But it took
mm,
years and years and years, and it takes
mm.
very conscious thinking, recognition, and then desire to change. And
Ah,
that's the one thing that I think is very important is you can have the awareness, but if you don't have the desire to be different,
mm,
then you can't be different. You
right,
have to want to change.
right. Thank you so much for that example. That really resonates, and I think, yeah, I've noticed in my own growth too, and kind of similar to you, these past couple of months, I've been going through a lot of like personal revelations and a lot to do with like authenticity and trusting myself um and the biggest thing I would say that has probably started to shift things more dramatically is the level of awareness of going, oh yeah, like yeah, maybe sometimes it's like 60-40, maybe sometimes it's 70-30, maybe less, like, but even just noticing new pattern, new way of being, old pattern, old way of being. I know where this old pattern comes from. I know that it's comfortable, that it's familiar, and I don't have to strong arm it away, which is what I would try to do before is like, I don't want this, go away. Especially when it's more around that like 50-50 range, it can be like,
Definitely.
ooh, it feels so like you're teetering so hard. You're like, I
Mhm.
really just need this to go away
And
so
just
I
going
can.
back and forth, oscillating between them. Yeah.
Yes,
It's so
totally.
exhausting.
It is. It is. And so it's really hard and it's hard to just kind of accept that. But when it starts to shift and it becomes the new thought, becomes more of the majority, which does take time and effort, then it gets a little bit easier to just have the awareness, non judgmental awareness of that other percentage that's there, that's just taking time to shrink little by little.
Mhm.
And the more you can kind of trust the new voice, the less you need the
Mhm.
old one to feel a sense of safety. And yeah, it's really very powerful. And it's funny because, I think something else I find really powerful in this process that was part of the reason I was so excited to have this conversation with you is because for me, looking to other people and in just not even like, not always having to have someone you're looking up to, but just looking at other people in an observational way to kind of notice, like, this is such a small thing, but when I was reading one of your recent newsletters, and you do this, and like all of them, when you refer to your family members, you refer with like just their, like a capital letter,
Mm-hmm.
the first letter of their name.
Mm-hmm.
Such a small thing, but it like occurred to me in a moment where I was like, huh, I bet some people could think that that's weird, or maybe the first time they encounter that, they're not really sure. Like it takes them a second to like
Mm-hmm.
figure out, what is she referring to, or what is this? But it's just you. It's just the way you want to speak and write, and it's true to you. And that is worthy and wonderful, and people can get on board with it, or somebody might have their own projection and reaction to like something that's kind of out of the
Right.
typical, that we refer to people by their full name. I don't know. It's like a small thing, but having that observation of you and the way that you express yourself and your creativity and the stories you want to tell, there was something about that that just really was like, that's possible. Like it kind of took me like, oh, yeah, maybe if I just want to say something or do something that just feels true to me, even if I'm afraid if it's not going to come across to somebody else, or if I'm going to have to explain myself for a second or whatever, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's okay. And that's actually like the only way to be,
Mm-hmm.
is, even when we're trying so hard to be homogenized or fit in or whatever, there's still this inherent core to just like who we are as a being, our soul, whatever you want to call it, that will always come through. And I think the more and more we can just free that up and embrace it and look for other examples in the world of where people are doing that, even the ways that rub us the wrong way, or,
Mm-hmm.
feel good to us, just noticing like it isn't a problem, and it's actually like a beautiful thing, even when it
Mm-hmm.
kind of rubs us the wrong way. Sometimes there can be an appreciation for like how
Mm-hmm.
authentic someone is being. Um, yeah, that just really kind of stuck out to me. And I think it's an important thing with like, you know, any of us, people listening, me and you, like as we go on these journeys, to ask ourselves hard questions and to increase awareness, and to, get to know yourself better, and to trust that, and whatever. There are so many examples, if you just look around for them, in the biggest to the smallest things, like,
Mm-hmm.
and that has been really empowering and strengthening to me as well. Um, and you're just such a good example of that, and you've been one of those examples that has empowered me, and I feel like that's an
Mm.
interesting part to bring in.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I am, I feel, what is the word? Is it grateful? I feel just, I couldn't tell you, but I feel very fulfilled by knowing that in any way that I am showing up as myself, could be empowering or could bring confidence to anybody else. So thank you for sharing with me, because that does mean a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, unless you have any final kind of thoughts on this question, on, kind of the direction we took it in, on belonging and
Mm.
authenticity, identity. Uh,
I do have
mhm.
one thing, which is, that I talk about in Learn to Let Go, that I think would apply to this question. It is I encourage the person who asks the question to have a belief in their own infinity. And
Mm,
by that, I mean to have belief in the many versions of themselves, who they were, who they are now, who they are becoming, the dozens of people they will become in the future, and to know that they have the power and the strength to change again and
mm,
again. And so, you're in a transition right now and it feels scary. But if it doesn't work out, you can change again. Nothing is permanent. So I think to trust in that. And hopefully, if they're able to lean into that and trust it a little bit and feel, recognize the strength they have within themselves, then maybe like this guilt can dissipate a little bit more quickly and maybe they can let go a little more
mm.
easily. knowing that if something doesn't work out, like they have the power to change that again.
Yep. Yep. I love that. It's the flow too, and I think, seasonality to life as well. And a big reason why I incorporate the seasons and nature and stuff into like the kinds of things that I talk about or the way that I think about growth, because, you know, we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving. And sometimes there might be a period where it's like ambition or whatever we want to
Hmm.
call it falls away and it just doesn't feel right. And it just is like, I just want to be here with what I have now and just
Hmm.
kind of live in that. And then there will maybe come a time where it's like, I've been inspired by something. And there's this ambitious streak in me that's just has this new mountaintop. And I
Yeah.
really want to be diligent and be dedicated to something and climb that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that idea of letting go, it
Hmm.
just stretches in so many different directions. It's like this is just who I am and how I am and what calls to me now, and that will
Hmm.
change 100 times over.
Hmm.
And so I don't have to be committed to who I used to be or who I think I should be, but I also don't have to be strong arm and committed to this
Hmm.
new version and being that for the rest of time.
Right. Absolutely. Have a resistance to labeling yourself. You don't need
Mm,
to box
mhm,
yourself in.
mhm,
That's what, labeling ourselves, that's what it makes it easier for everybody else to define us. But you
mm.
don't need to make it easier for other people. You need to make it good for yourself.
Oh, yes. Okay, so before we end here, I would love to hear what are your three must have, must do, must believe in, whatever, however you want to take it, three things
Mm,
for living well.
okay. I must have space and solitude. That's how I recharge. That's how make sure I feel like myself and that
Mm,
I feel grounded. I must take walks. That's when I do most of my best writing and when my thinking is the clearest. And I must have healthy boundaries in my relationships.
hmm,
Um, I spent, I think, most of my life not feeling like it was okay to put boundaries in place, especially with people I love the most. Um, but the result was that I could not love them properly without the boundaries. So the boundaries allow me to love better. And so I think that's really important for me.
mm. So beautiful. I love those. And please tell us where people can find you, what you want people to know about you. I'll have everything linked
Sure.
below, but
Okay.
yeah.
Like Hayden said, I'm a writer, I'm an illustrator. I'm interested in producing work, primarily books that help people learn more about themselves and feel more connected, more deeply connected with themselves. Um, and you can find me at meeralee.com. I'm on Instagram, Meera Lee Patel, and I write a mostly weekly newsletter, Dear Somebody, that's on Substack.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have any reflections or comments or questions, you can leave them below wherever you're listening, or you can find either one of us on social media and leave a comment. And you can find me at the Evergreen RX on all platforms. And I will catch you guys next season. So be sure to follow along to be notified when I post next. Thanks. Bye.